copies, but you're live.
This is Senate Transportation. It is the 26th of March. We're here with the agency, Patrick Murphy and Damian Leonard from Ledge Council to set this up. The discussion in the House has been in vehicle miles traveled, how the public would pay, and what intervals it would pay. Would they pay up front? Would they pay at the end? And I've asked Damian and Patrick to highlight what the agency's position is versus what the House did, so we can have a better idea. And what I would like to come out of this discussion is some feeling of our committee on what we want Damian to put into a draft as a starting point for us, and why don't the two of you in some form explain what the difference is? And I think, Damian, you did send something out.
I sent it to you. I haven't sent it to the whole committee, but I can forward it to the whole committee.
I posted the side by side. Should I not have?
So it's posted.
Okay, great. So it's posted. Yeah. Yep. So that I sent out side by side. So it should be on the committee's webpage. It is an 11 by 17 document. So it will likely be somewhat small on your screens. I apologize for that. But otherwise it was going to be about 35 pages long. So this got us down to 9. So this basically has the two House proposals before you. The proposal on the right under the Ways and Means heading was incorporated into the bill by the House at second reading last night. So that's what will be coming over from the House, assuming there are no changes at third reading this morning. The first couple of sections here, you'll notice the Ways and Means version changes the title to road usage charges. The reason for
I'm sorry, my internet's not very good. Do you mind putting it up there?
I do not have sharing authority right now. When Megan comes back.
Darn. All right, so I'll just. Do you want to look? I'll just wait.
Yeah.
Oh.
Print it out. So
I think she's grabbing them.
yeah, she's grabbing the printer.
Okay.
So you'll
All right,
have it
then I'll.
momentarily.
All right, thank you.
So the Ways and Means version is called road usage charges. We'll get to that because it contemplates an additional surcharge for EV rental vehicles that are rented in Vermont. And this is to address the fact that a lot of rental vehicles are registered in all over the country. And so you wouldn't capture any sort of infrastructure fee or anything like that for these vehicles, but they will be driven on Vermont roads. So we'll get there in a moment.
There you go. Thank you.
The initial definitions, I'm not going to spend too much time with. Just the important ones to know are mileage reporting period, which is the time between annual inspections or the time between your most recent annual inspection and a terminating event. And terminating events, which are registering your electric vehicle in another state, a change in ownership or lesseeship, or the termination of the electric vehicle's registration, which could be everything from an old electric vehicle that's been taken off the road, a car owned by a parent who has given up their driver's license that you're temporarily taking off the road and you might register later, or a car that's been totaled or for some other reason, blood damage, something like that. So you're terminating the registration because the car's going to be junked. So
I just have a question. If you're married and you have a car that you purchased together and you're both on the title, or
Mhm.
is that a terminating event if you get divorced?
I,
I'm not saying,
We're not
you
that
know,
would be a change, so,
dang.
so if,
So my
if,
husband and I are both on the EV that we own, the Kona. Let's say, oh my gosh, our relationship, or he passed away, I don't know, or I passed away, I don't know what I'm trying to say. But
so
they
you're-
wrote the fee, would it be a terminating event when we ended our relationship, or would it be you'd have to only do it if like the title was changed, or the registration was changed?
the way this is written
Cause he could
now,
drive it a ton, you know, without my, or vice versa.
yes, so, this does contemplate a change in ownership, so that would be, retitling the vehicle in a different party. Same thing could happen if you had a personal vehicle that you then sell to your business and your business uses it. That's the way it's written right now. I invite Patrick to weigh in though, to see if the agency has any additional comments or thoughts on that issue. It's not something that came up in the house.
I guess I'm just
So-
thinking like in a litigation sense, if someone had a very large tax that they had to pay due to the driving of an ex-partner, I could see some difficulty in getting the payment, first of all, and then, but.
That would be likely handled in the context of that, divorce proceeding.
Oh, okay,
So when you're figuring out how the assets of the relationship are being split up, that's not something the agency is going to worry about
Okay.
as much as the family court will worry about that. And so you may end up, paying the fee that's due in a timely manner to avoid late payment charges. And then the family court will apportion when they do their accounting and break out who gets which part of the marital assets. They may also allocate costs related to the sort of usage within the marital estate, but that would also be up to your own well, not your, but
yeah.
if you're for parties in a divorce, it would be up to them to argue that this shouldn't be allocated to me.
Oh, yeah, okay, so I guess, yeah, that's interesting, but they also delete the pay-as-you-go thing, so I guess how does that, like, if you were paid up, I don't know,
Yeah, so I haven't even gotten there yet.
sorry,
So
Or I
you guys are getting
have
ahead of me here.
Can I just make a comment on the terminating event? I think it's terminating that vehicle's participation in this program. That's what's being terminated.
It's terminating that vehicle's participation in the program with respect to that owner or lessee.
Okay, so the
So-
vehicle and the owner.
Right.
Okay,
So, for example, if Senator White sold her electric Kona to another party, at that point, Senator White would have had a terminating event and would pay up the MBUF due for that reporting period. And then the individual or party that bought the Kona, assuming they're in Vermont, would register it and they would start their first mileage reporting period.
so it's like a utility bill.
Yes,
Think of it that way.
yeah,
But-
same thing as, if you sell your house or you end your lease on an apartment, you pay your utility bill up through your end date. The new person pays when they start.
but okay. I just am worried that people you're still gonna keep the lights on, or someone's still gonna be driving it, and where does that get allocated with the odometer reading? Like, when is there the odometer reading to get is at a terminating event, is there any requirements around?
So
You have to get an odometer reading to confirm it.
when you're selling or terminating the lease, there's an odometer disclosure form that has to be filed.
Great.
Let's get back to.
Okay, so,
Okay, no, I am not getting,
yeah. I think what I'm being asked to do is go up to 10,000 or maybe 30,000 feet and
yes,
speed up.
Okay.
So,
so we can, we want to definitely figure out the stuff down, but let's go from the 30 down. And we're gonna have to sort through all of this.
But can I ask, is the purpose of this so that we're coming up with our own recommended amendment to this language potentially coming from the House?
We're going to do a strike off.
Okay, so this is to help us understand what would be in a new draft that comes up.
And there will be a new draft that reflects what we like.
Okay,
That, and I thought before he drafted it, we would say, here's the direction
Well,
that we want to head.
can I make a recommendation around terminating event? Like, I mean, that, you know, like, can I flag and say, I do think there needs to be more clarity in that definition at that point?
And there might be more that we don't know.
There might be more, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Did it pass the House last night? Did they get to it?
They did.
Second reading?
Yeah, it was the last, no, it was the last item in the House. They did get through it. So it passed second reading. There was another portion that went on a roll call vote, but everything else was a voice vote. And it all passed. So let me just make a note here. And getting back to this here, so both versions have the basic annual mileage-based user fee, which contemplates paying your mileage-based user fee within 14 days, or contemplates having it assessed within 14 days after the conclusion of your mileage reporting period, whether that's the full year or the terminating event shortened mileage reporting period. And then having the commissioner mail the assessment to the individual. If you remember from last year's T-bill, mail now includes email and electronic notice to contemplate MyDMV. So if you have a MyDMV account, you can get an electronic notice of your assessment, and then gives individuals 45 days to either pay the full amount or to enter into an agreement to pay the fee in quarterly or monthly installments. My understanding from the agency is that this may not actually reflect their original intent, which was to have folks pay lump sum, or with the House transportation option, there was also a pay-as-you-go option where you would make interim disclosures of your mileage to the commissioner and then true up, and then a pay in advance option for newly registered vehicles. And my understanding is that the agency, and Patrick can comment on this, contemplated the quarterly and monthly payments with the estimated upfront payment, where you choose to do estimated payments rather than paying the full bill at the end of the year, so that you can break that bill down into, so instead of $154, you're paying like $12 or $14 a month. Does that make sense?
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is the Transportation Committee on the House side created this pay-as-you-go option language in the T-bill. And then I'm seeing that it's removed in the Ways and Means Amendment. And my understanding is that's probably because AOT lobbied to get that removed? No. Okay.
So pay as you go was put in as in the discretion of the commissioner, that they could offer a pay as you go option. And then the other piece that was in here was newly registered vehicles, to ensure that they're paying into the system. They would pay an estimated amount up front with a true up at the end of the year. On further conversations with Patrick, it's come to my attention that the agency, as I understand it, again, Patrick can comment here, that the agency actually envisioned the monthly and quarterly payments being an option for that upfront payment. So if an owner chooses to make that $154 estimated payment, which is based on average mileage, instead of paying the big lump sum, you can choose to pay smaller quarterly or monthly amounts.
Yeah.
But if you choose to pay at the end of the year, rather than stretching that out for another year, their goal was to actually get that money within the 60-day period that's provided here. So that within the 60 days of the end of the year, you paid your lump sum.
At the end of the year,
Yeah.
in arrears to your
Yeah.
traveling versus.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, think of it the way you do your income taxes. You can make estimated payments, or if you get
So wait, the agency wants you to pay up front, and the language is saying you could pay it once you've done the driving.
There are two options.
Okay.
Pay in advance, like you could do with your income taxes. Or like you do if you're getting regular wages, they take a little bit out on every paycheck. And then at the end of the year, you true up with your income tax return. In this case, it would be the agency gets your odometer disclosure from your inspection, and they true up for you and either send you a
Yeah.
bill for the balance or give you a credit against your upcoming payment. The other option is you get to the end of the year and they look at the mileage you traveled and they say you haven't paid anything. You know, and you traveled 11,000 miles, so that's going to be $154 under the current proposed fee. So, and that, of course, would differ by person. So you could choose either option. The way it was constructed in the house, and this was just a shortcoming in the process to get here. We were very rushed, and I did not get down everything the agency wanted exactly right.
Well, we don't always have to do everything the agency wants every time, like just to
Right.
understand, like.
Fair
But
enough.
can I just clarify, is house transportation, was this a misunderstanding or was this a policy choice that they made? in
This was
differentiating?
not, so this, I think,
Cause it does
It's
sound
best
like a
care.
policy choice in a way.
It is a policy.
Yeah.
it is a policy choice. The change between transportation and Ways and Means was a policy choice. I'm not sure that house transportation, and I understood this distinction
Okay.
from AOT. So I'm
Okay.
not sure they had a chance to make that
And
policy
did we
choice.
confirm that with not that I'm not saying you're not accurate in your description, but I do think we should have you confirmed that with the chair? Because I know there was some misunderstanding of this concept in general in house transportation, so I don't know if there was universal.
At this point, we're going to decide on what we want to do. I
Okay.
asked the chair on transportation to come. They have a grandchild being born as we speak. A
Oh,
grandchild
no.
being born, so he couldn't come. He's at the hospital with that. So,
Okay.
It's a really good.
but what we
That's-
need
that's
to
true.
do is we need to decide what we feel comfortable coming out in a first draft. What do we like?
But you got
I would-
assurances that it was a misunderstanding and not a policy.
So
No, it is a
this is a policy choice.
Oh.
What I'm saying is from my perspective, I did not understand this.
Oh.
The draft was put out there. House transportation worked on the language that was put out there and kept refining it. And what you see here is what they got to.
Yeah.
I didn't understand this until until basically today in talking to Patrick. So this is my understanding now. I don't know this. I don't think this was a policy choice on their part. They did want to offer multiple payment options.
That's kind of.
The lump sum, the quarterly, the monthly. In talking to the agency this morning, I'm understanding now from Patrick that I may not have understood their intent when I put this language together.
Okay.
So I want to just be clear that they got this language, they worked on it. We were working very fast to make crossover. And now in talking to Patrick more this morning about this as the dust is settling, realizing that I may have misunderstood that.
Okay.
And so I wanted to express that the transportation started with my best version of what AOT had proposed. They made changes to it. They made policy choices. But not all of them, not everything they had in front of them necessarily reflects what the agency's intent and proposal was. So they didn't necessarily consider everything. That was my only reason to bring that up. And I think I may have veered off into a ditch a little bit
No,
here, but
Well, now we're
just
gonna
trying to
add it.
understand.
Yeah.
the concept.
so, okay, so the mileage based user fee in, bottom of page 3 of your handout here. I've tried to keep things together so it's easy to see the things side by side. The house had, had language on the report as you go. Or the pay as you go option. Ways and Means did not. So it's basically just you calculate it by multiplying the miles traveled by the rate, which is set in the next subsection at 1.4 cents per mile traveled. So like I said, for 11,000 miles, that works out to about $154. It's about $14 per 1,000 miles traveled. So you can multiply out by your own mileage.
And they stuck with the rate that was proposed by.
Yeah, that was the AOT proposed rate. Yep, what's missing in both of these is the House made the choice not to include an annual inflation adjustment in the rate.
So they didn't index it.
It's not indexed. It would require coming back to the legislature to adjust it.
That's one way to do that.
Yeah, so that's also a policy choice.
Yeah.
For all of you.
Mhm.
The exemptions, both sides had the US government because constitutionally we can't tax them. Ways and Means added vehicles owned and operated by the state and vehicles that are used in short-term rentals because there's a separate charge for them and the Ways and Means construct. And the reason for that separate charge is because of the way rental car companies operate, they wouldn't have to register their electric vehicles in Vermont in order to rent them out here. And so you could just register them in any other state and then have them come on over to Vermont for transactions. You wouldn't be capturing those miles.
Why did this state now not pay registration fees?
So the state,
That's
yeah, so the state does pay gas tax because that's baked into the price at the pump. But the state does not pay registration fees on state vehicles. And then so the choice was made in Ways and Means to exclude the state from this user fee. Again, that's a policy choice. I think what was expressed up there was that they didn't see the reason to just be doing interdepartmental transfers for the registration fees. But again, policy choice for all of you.
And on the rentals, I'm just gonna wanna talk about that more.
Yeah,
No,
Not now,
we're-
Just later.
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
I
in a minute.
see the rentals as kind of a small side issue on the site.
Okay.
But we'll
Yeah.
get down to it. We need to.
So both of them provide that this is in addition to other taxes and so forth. There are some difference. They both provide an appeal of the amount of the assessment. So if you think there's a mistake on your bill, you can appeal it. The version that's coming over from the House provides a 45-day appeal period. The transportation version was 15 days. And they both provide that you can get a refund if you've terminated your ownership and you're not, you're following a terminating event. If you've overpaid the state, you can get a refund for your overpayment. So
That's the truing up.
it is. Typically the true up is just a credit against your next bill.
Yep.
But this way, if you're, say you getting rid of the electric vehicle and you're going over to a hybrid or a diesel or
Or a different
whatever,
electric vehicle.
or a different electric vehicle, all sorts of options, or you're moving to another state.
No,
Um,
not an option.
All right, the section 4304, it just requires odometer reports at a terminating event. And mileage reports as part of the inspection. Going on to page 5, if you fail to pay the fee when it's due, you get your assessed interest at 1.5% per month, up to a maximum of 18%, which is 1 year's interest. And then the Ways and Means amendment adds in permission for an individual to request a waiver of the interest and overdue fee at any time, and allows the commissioner either upon receiving a request for a waiver or on their own motion, so their own volition, to waive some or all of the amount of the overdue fee and interest. And it updates the language from due to excusable neglect to something that's a little more clear, which is that good cause existed for the delay or requiring payment would constitute an economic hardship. There's a penalty rate if you fail to file reports. So if the department can't determine your mileage, you get assessed at the 98th percentile of miles traveled, which is estimated to be like a $300 something bill. So it's a significant increase there. And 4307 in both versions. So bottom of page 5, top of page 6 allows the commissioner to suspend or refuse to renew your registration if you don't pay your MBUF. 4308, this is the powers of the commissioner. The update between Ways and Means and House Transportation was, as we looked more closely at the statutes, we realized that the deleted portions of the House Transportation version are all already covered in Chapter 2 of Title 23, which provides general sort of hearing and authority to conduct hearings and subpoena evidence and so forth to the commissioner for purposes of carrying out the title. So if someone's contesting their bill and they have information on miles traveled that contradicts the department's information, the commissioner can require them to provide that information as part of the appeal, that sort of thing.
And so that was removed. So
It was removed from this because it's duplicative of what's already there. 4309 is the appeal process. Both versions have an appeal to Superior Court. The Ways and Means option adds a prior administrative appeal to the commissioner. So, and again, the commissioner has this authority under sections 105 to 107 to appoint a hearing officer to hear your appeal, so that you don't have to go through the process of a court proceeding, which is expensive and time consuming. And so this still provides the Superior Court, but provides that interim appeal. And then 4321, this is the new subchapter on road usage charge for rental vehicles. Essentially what it does is it assesses an additional 1% on top of the current 9% under the purchase and use tax. So it becomes, instead of 9%, there's 10% now charged on the rental charge for each EV rental in the state of Vermont, and 1% of that goes directly to the transportation fund.
That's the way they handle
That's the way they handle the rental cars. I don't think, Logan, we don't have any modeling on actual mileage by EV rental cars. So this is just an effort to collect something. The changes in section 20, this is just updating the existing infrastructure fee because it's still called the EV infrastructure fee, even though EVs won't be paying it anymore. So just changing that. And then the other piece here is it deletes the allocation of those funds for the ACCD level 1 and 2 charger program that they've been providing grants and support to add level 1 and 2 charging ports at workplaces and multi-unit dwellings. And this means that the money would just go to the transportation fund. Section 21 provides a transition. They're very similar. The big difference is that the Ways and Means transition only gives you a credit for your infrastructure fee if your initial mileage reporting period, so your next inspection, is before you renew your registration. So in other words, it's within the time that was covered by your infrastructure fee. So
what's the difference between the House and the Senate?
So
The House and the
in House Transportation's version,
Sorry.
in House Transportation's version, every EV would receive an $89 credit for their initial mileage reporting period from their last infrastructure fee. So basically your last infrastructure fee would be credited against your initial bill for miles.
So we're
traveled.
generous the first time you do this.
And the second version says we're only going to do that if your registration is your registration renewal is after you start your first mileage reporting period.
Is it generous or is it just not double charging people? Like,
Well, so
We might
the,
have some overlap, so
yeah, so the Ways and Means, I think, is technically the one that's not double charging. And the transportation is maybe administratively simpler because everyone gets an $89 credit. But some folks are going to be getting a credit for a period that's after they actually paid that infrastructure fee for. So if the infrastructure fee didn't go away, you'd be paying another $89 at your registration. But instead, what's happening is that you won't pay that $89 at your registration. Instead, you'll start paying your MBUF when you get to your next inspection. Does that make sense?
I understood it when you first said it, so.
You'll have a year of not paying.
in the
No, so
original,
in the Ways and
Now-
Means version, because there is no pay in advance or pay as you go option,
yeah,
there would be a year with no revenue from the MBUF. So, and I'll let AOT testify as to their concerns about that, but
Okay.
under the Ways and Means construct, there's no MBUF revenue in 2027. Or essentially none. There could be terminating events, but yeah. The transportation version would have allocated any revenues in fiscal year 2027, so January through June, from advance payments or short mileage reporting periods where someone has a terminating event, to the general state aid for town highways. That was taken out in the Ways and Means because they're not anticipating any revenues. And then Ways and Means added a report back on an implementation plan for the pay-as-you-go option. So they're not opposed to that, but their feeling was that putting it in the statute before it was fully mapped out didn't make sense. So instead, they wanted a report back so they could do additional legislation. And then they make a transfer of 2.2 million from the TIB fund to the transportation fund. 1.7 million of that would be allocated to general state aid for town highways. And this relates back to their deletion of language earlier in the bill related to using excess local option tax revenues to pay into general state aid for town highways. So in lieu of that, they did this one-time 1.7 million transfer, and then the remaining $500,000
That's,
would just go straight to the transportation fund.
this gets
For any purpose.
into revenues and where we are. It
Yeah.
isn't, I think the first question that I hear for us is, would we do an upfront charge? And, or would we do the end of the year charge? In this, and, the upfront charge would require truing up at the end. Would we, at the true up point, if we went in that direction, would we do it a credit or would we, expecting to pay back money? So my first question would be, feelings about upfront charge versus paying at the end.
paying at the end.
Are those our only choices?
Do you have a third choice?
Well, I
that
just
you-
feel like, people are used to paying for gas and for utilities monthly. That's a very standard, way to pay. And people budget monthly. So if there's an option to do it monthly, that you could even have an automatic payment, on your credit card. I think that would be the best thing.
Here's, well, I
I
just.
mean, for the residents, for the
I would
drivers.
just say, if I pull up to the gas pump at this point, I'm probably paying $45 to $50 a fill. And if we're talking about $150 a year that you're gonna collect out of that, and you do it monthly, you're not paying $15 a month. And I'm wondering, would we go to monthly or would we do, say, quarterly?
And if we do, like, you know, typically, if you pay in advance, you get a break, right? I mean, in most things, when you pay in advance, you don't, there's a incentive that's a lower price. So, or some 10% or 5% or 2%, but there's some financial incentive. But I just think with automobiles, people are really used to paying when you use it.
But
If that's so, is the
but
negative.
if you do it at the end, it all comes due.
Right, and sometimes it's hard for people to have that chunk of money at that time. But is the reason not to do that the administrative cost?
Yeah, I guess what we didn't hear from.
Well, the agency
before
wants to
on
do
that.
a,
Yeah,
Patrick, why don't you tell us what the agency was thinking?
Thank you. For the record, Patrick Murphy, State Policy Director for the Agency of Transportation. So our hope is to be able to provide as many options for payment as possible, to be as flexible as possible. And recognizing that with the gas tax now, people essentially pay as you go, and that for some folks with lower incomes, it may be difficult to pay all at once, whether that's upfront or at the end. I think there is some middle ground here between the two versions of the language that Damien alluded to, which is that people could have the option to pay at the end after all the miles have been calculated and a fee is applied. But if they want to pay upfront, or if they want to pay on a monthly or quarterly basis, they would first have to have an estimate. We don't have mileage from the prior reporting period, so we'd have to base that monthly or quarterly payment on something. And the something would be, as we've proposed it, $154, the average of what a gas vehicle pays in gas taxes. So as Senator Harrison alluded to, it's similar to what people might do for a utility payment, maybe for estimated income tax payments, where you begin with some sort of estimate, and then it's reconciled at the end. In all cases, the final amount that people will pay will be based on the actual mileage, and it would be at that point of registration after the mileage reporting period closes. So you could have a situation where you decide to pay $154 up front and not think about it until you get to your next registration. Or you could say, I'd rather space things out and pay on a quarterly or monthly basis, and maybe you're then paying, 12 something dollars per month. Or you could say, I'd rather just wait to see what my mileage will be and then pay at the end of the reporting period. And then there's no reconciliation needed at all. So I think that would be the, and then of course the agency would like to be able to offer, if the IT development supports it, the option to pay as you go, which would be, somebody basically taking a photo of their odometer reading and paying as they take, say, a long trip, and being able to stay on top of it in that way. We'd like to offer as many options as possible to make this as convenient to people as possible. We don't know yet whether that latter option will be available by January 1, so we wanted language that would allow for that possibility but didn't direct us to do it. In the other cases, we know that the system requirements that we've specified for the contractor will be able to meet those statutory requirements. And so we would like to stick to the language that would allow for monthly and quarterly payments in advance, or you know, you're ending up having it reconciled at the point of registration. The Ways and Means language, I think, by allowing for a payment plan beyond that time, so having that mileage calculated, a fee calculated, being assessed, and then spacing payments out over the following year, creates more issues, both in terms of compliance, because compliance is envisioned at the registration renewal process, but also there's just likely to be a number of edge cases that come up in the succeeding year, which, you know, through a terminating event, divorce, whatever it might be, will end up, you know, creating another sort of layer of administrative costs to figure out how to deal with those situations. So our preference would be to provide as many options as possible.
Daniel, can you tell us why Ways and Means didn't want to offer this option?
So, I can't speak for all Ways and Means, but my understanding from the discussion was that there were concerns about having folks pay upfront for miles they hadn't traveled. And so the way the language came over to them, the pay in advance option was a lump sum rather than what I explained earlier, that I think I misunderstood the agency's intent when I drafted it. And so it made it through as just a lump sum without the quarterly and monthly options. And then the pay as you go option, they did like that option, but their sense was that because it's been put into the you know, sort of the parameters for the third party administrator to develop the IT, but because that IT hasn't been developed, they didn't want to put it into statute and leave it simply in the discretion of the commissioner without further legislative review. And so that, I don't think they were against pay as you go.
The pay as you go is based on actual miles.
Based on actual miles,
Which is
but yeah,
okay.
their concern revolved around having folks be required to pay $150
Are they opposed to the
upfront.
2-year registration fee?
You mean the current infrastructure fee?
No, right now you can pay for your registration 1 year, or you can do 2 years.
Yep.
And that would be paying your registration ahead of time for vehicle you know now you would have. That seems like something they would object to. If the
So-
logic was to follow. Right?
I can't answer that for them. And
They didn't bring that up.
no, there were just concerns expressed about having to pay a lot of money up front for this, when if you drive an internal combustion car, you know, you pay whenever you fill up your
But it's
tank.
possible, not required.
But then, understood.
Okay.
I can't,
No,
yeah. I'm not a member of the Ways and Means Committee, so I can only share sort of what was expressed on the record, and I can't speak for the membership.
Okay, thank you.
But that was before that was a lump sum option, right?
Yeah,
Not the pay month, you know, once a month, quarterly, a
right.
month maybe.
Yeah, so
So they
the
didn't entertain that.
assuming it's okay with this committee, if you want to look at a revised version of the agency's proposal, I can have that sort of pay in advance with the option of lump sum or selecting a monthly or quarterly payment for the year, you know. And that sort of gives folks the option. And then at the end of the year, the way the true up works is, assuming you're keeping the vehicle, you get a credit for your over or under amount. And then that would just be applied against your next payments there. Or you get an additional assessment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, it could be like, if you think of your cell phone bills, it's generally a flat amount, but then say you travel to Canada and you don't have an international plan, so you pay by the day up there. And so when you get back from your trip the next month, you get a bill for like an extra $60 because you have 5 days in Quebec.
But just to be clear, I am paying for miles that I'm driving out of state if they're on my odometer. So this
You're-
would really make me as an EV driver say, I'm not taking my car on our road trip, you know, because,
Well,
More likely to take the train.
Yeah.
but
So-
versus an EV, like like the gas car versus a train is a real debate.
to be fair, you're not necessarily paying with the gas tax where you buy the gas. You're not necessarily driving in the same state that you buy the gas in. So for example, you take a gas car that's got 500 miles of range on a tank. You can do a round trip to Portland, Maine and back from Montpelier, buy your gas in Montpelier, drive to Portland, Maine or Boston and back, and then refill in Montpelier. You've never paid, apart from the tolls in New Hampshire, you've never paid a penny in those two states. And the same could happen for someone in Boston coming up to ski at, Mad River Glen or something like that. They buy gas in Massachusetts and they don't pay a penny in Vermont. So then there is no perfect
But isn't
reflection
the-
even now
Okay.
as to where you pay your road usage charges, except for toll roads. Toll roads are the only sort of road usage charge that's directly tied to using the road you're
But
driving.
we're also
on.
like changing the paradigm is completely shifting.
The
Because,
paradigm is
because
shifting.
I'm already paying for
Yeah.
fuel as an EV driver. This is a mileage fee. That's not a fuel fee. Those are different concepts. So the idea of the tank range is a totally irrelevant analogy. Because
It's
we are
not, though,
talking about,
because
isn't the whole point that it's supposed to be you're paying for the miles that you're
when the
traveling?
gas tax was created, it was designed to compensate for your usage of the roads because mileage was fairly uniform at that
It's the
point.
tax. Cost.
So it's the tax. So there are other taxes that you potentially pay. Sales tax on gasoline.
Mhm.
You pay taxes and fees for your electricity at your house. But the gas tax itself, the per gallon tax, was initially designed to be essentially a usage charge that captured usage of the roads by cars that were all getting roughly the same mileage. Now we have this huge range where you can be driving, an F-250 or F-350 that's getting around 20 miles a gallon. Or you could be driving a Prius that's getting 60 miles per the gallon. But you're still paying that, whatever it is, 32 cents a gallon to the state. Even though for the same trip, you might buy significantly fewer gallons for one vehicle than the other.
Mhm.
With EVs, you can get, because the paradigm is shifting and the technology is improving, you can charge per mile traveled. But it's important to note that our current usage charges are not perfect and tying it to the jurisdiction that you're traveling in. It's the jurisdiction where you buy the fuel for the miles you travel that captures the money for the mileage there, even if you essentially you fill up and or if you do like some people do on the road trip, you fill up where the gas is cheap.
Yeah.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, New Hampshire, Ohio, other places like that where the gas is cheap. And then you travel through other states where the gas is not as
Yeah,
cheap.
the other layer is you're missing the federal picture. There's no federal EMBA.
And
So there's no, like, the major, if, it just, I think unfortunately, just, I'm worried that although I appreciate like the logic of what you're saying, I think the reality of what driver decisions will be made, you're creating a setup where people are making financial decisions that are not good for all of the environmental, like all of the other goals we're
Right, and
presenting, but that's an argument.
so
not a-
I can't argue that policy with you. All I'm trying to express is that legally, both systems we have are imperfect. They don't,
That's
yeah.
where I would totally
Right,
agree.
Yeah.
and I,
Hopefully, what we end up with in some period of time is if we get everybody on equal miles travel. If we can get everybody to that system, it's gonna be imperfect to get there, but we're imperfect now. So I'm hoping that what we can get to in our thinking in the path that we're trying to set up is something that at the end will be fair.
I agree. So just to follow up on that, so if there are systems, obviously, you know, where that you can know exactly where the car traveled. But
Yeah.
those are a lot more expensive, and so that would be all of us paying that additional expense, so that's a consideration. So just going back to how we would charge, I really appreciate V-Trans for having flexibility. That's huge. And I think there's gonna need to be a lot of outreach on this, and people are just so that folks understand. And I think we should look at the monthly model, make sure that we have that. I'd actually like to hear from power companies, or just on what kind of who defaults, how often do customers default?
Oh,
Because my concern is,
disconnections. kind of
yeah, and just don't pay their bills. So I think if we are gonna do the monthly based on what miles you do, I think there should be a little bit of a cushion at the beginning of someone's term in this process, like a deposit, and some utilities do that. So it's like $30, for example, just to make sure that you don't end up owing a lot at the end of the year, and then you're gonna have to pay fees, collection fees, and
Well,
it'll just be another.
The only thing I would say about this is
Yeah.
if it's $150. For a lot of people now, that's no more than 3 fill-ups.
I understand, but you do the Phillips one at a time.
And you're still paying
And so just that having a chunk of money is the hard part for a lot of people.
Right.
So, and the chunk at the end, so actually, while gas is expensive, that's a good time to do this, to implement this. So we can show that overall you save money with an EV.
If you.
And it won't just be 150 for everybody. We saw in the report that UVM did that rural EV drivers are going to have like $400. So it's like, there is,
You-
that's,
You would have to put on 26,000 miles a year to get to 400, that's a $400.
yeah, that's rural drivers going
Wow.
commuting.
Yeah, but
Yeah, every day.
that's a lot of, I mean, I drive more than any rural person, maybe as much, and I figured out mine to be about 280. That's about 22,000 miles a year,
Let's see.
$280.
Well, we can look at that report again. I mean, they could,
it's $14 per 1,000
think-
miles traveled.
14 per thousand, so whatever they drive.
I think
Yeah.
what I'm hearing here is if we're gonna do payment period, if we're gonna do the upfront thing, and then there's gonna be a truing up. Is because you can't, if we wait till the end of the year, you can't do a monthly, or you can't do quarterly.
But are you saying we won't do monthly?
No,
Okay.
I'm not saying
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
On that, I think what I'm hearing is we would do the, upfront, and we would, leave it to the discretion of the agency to come, and what they're talking about is monthly and quarterly plans.
Yeah,
Does that make sense to people? That,
at this point, yes, that makes sense. But I do want to talk more about the details.
We'll be taking
no,
right into
we're,
this, right?
we're just trying to get him to get us a draft.
Okay.
That we can go through.
Okay,
Is that?
yeah,
All right, so what,
And we're gonna do the detail. The next question I heard was, would we do a credit, or would we expect the agency to send money back?
Credit,
that's,
money back, that's,
so the bill constructs, both constructs from the House provide a credit against your next bill. Or if you are getting rid of the vehicle, then you get a refund, but that's the only instance
Yeah.
where you would actually get a check in the mail.
Does that,
I want to understand the credit because I don't want people to go into a hole that just,
if we're gonna get a draft
Yeah.
of a bill,
okay,
what would, does that sound someplace like something that you?
oh, I would consider it, sure, so.
I would like to see the details on what they proposed. I wasn't really clear on the changing from the fee to the MBUC, from the infrastructure fee, how they have that money going. So I
So,
don't know, you can either explain it or put it in your,
yeah, and I need to touch base with, so
maybe there's a little time chart that says
Yeah.
like this time, this money, or they
so we
they
can,
wanted money go to the local roads program, so I didn't quite understand. So I don't know if that,
yeah, so that I can put together a chart with, or Logan can, with, a couple of different options, but basically there's really two options under the Ways and Means construct for folks who already own an EV at the end of the year and are going in, have a currently registered EV going into 2027. The first is so we'll use, let's say your registration renewal is March. If your inspection, your first inspection in 2020, or your inspection in 2027 is in January or February, so before your registration renewal, then you get an $89 credit against your first MBUF. So you have a credit applied to your
but
total
you
bill.
pay $89 in January. And then-
Because you paid $89 the prior year and you're still in that EV
You're still in
infrastructure
that calendar year.
calendar year period. So if your inspection, on the other hand, so again, your registration is March, if your inspection is after that registration date, whether it's a day later or 6, 7, 8 months later, you don't get that credit. That's the Ways and Means construct.
Yeah, if we could
Because-
see a time chart, I think it'll be interesting.
If you pay your $89 and your registration came due in December. And you pay, and I paid the full $89, and then in January, the MBUF goes into place.
Right, you have your car inspected in January.
I have my car inspected and I start the MBUF thing. Under the Ways and Means proposal, am I out?
No, under the Ways and Means proposal, because you won't renew your registration until December. That inspection, if you get it inspected in January, that's the start of your mileage reporting period,
Yep,
and it falls within that infrastructure fee year.
Yeah.
So if your infrastructure fee year from your last registration before 2027 includes your inspection in 2027, you're getting credit at $89.
They don't
for
try to
Ways and Means.
prorate it or something, it's just like. give you the whole-
It's just a flat $89 credit for everyone so that they don't have to.
And the money. Well, the money still goes the same way. Does it ever seem like when you were explaining? There was
So
times where they moved toward the money.
well, right now, the way it's set up, and so this changes. Right now, the way it's set up is under 361, that money goes to the transportation fund to then be transferred to ACCD for the level 1 and 2 charger program.
Right.
Depending on your effective date on the change there, will affect whether that money is just getting deposited in the transportation fund for transportation uses generally, or specifically to be sent over for this grant program at ACCD. I think, and I have to look back at Let me just,
I just assumed it would all transfer at January first when the MBOT is.
I think that the effective date, yeah, all of that takes effect January first, so those infrastructure fees are going to ACCD if they were paid out in 2026. So
So starting January first, even if you haven't had your inspection yet, it would go to T fund. And then you're getting a credit for it.
you're getting a credit for it, but yeah.
I think it makes sense just to make the pay and then have that all go to T fund at that point.
Sorry,
And it's
I
fine.
didn't even see our agenda.
Yeah.
Ted was first, but he got bumped.
Oh.
I'll see y'all next week.
Thank you.
So the, yeah, under the way this is set up coming out of the House, there is a credit going to folks for money that's been paid in that is going to be transferred to ACCD for the level 1 and 2 charger program.
In 2027.
No, so that transfer ends January 1, 2027, but no one's paying none of these EVs are paying that infrastructure fee anymore in 2027.
Right.
But they would be getting a credit for the infrastructure fee they paid in 2026 in some cases.
Well, where would that money come from?
That is something that you may want to look into more closely. So there is a disconnect in there about that, and you can, if you change the effective date on that infrastructure fee change to July 1, then the folks who renew their registration in the last 6 months, their money just goes to the T fund, period. So that's something you may want to look at and consider. I don't know if the House heard from ACCD on that fund. They're not.
I would like,
We want to hear from
I
them.
want to get an update on what they've been doing anyway from Broadlawn.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
certainly don't want them to have a project in the pipeline and we cut off the funds.
Or they have to refund it.
Right.
I don't know. I was not in the House every day, so I don't know if they heard from them or not, but I was not
You
present.
don't spend your evenings reviewing the tapes.
Yeah,
Everyone else does it. And
We, I think we'll want to hear from you. What would you like to do with this?
Are you asking what's it about?
I'm
this?
asking the table,
On the fee part? Or on the whole?
well, on this particular piece with the $89. And we've also got, at the end of the year, would we do a credit or would we do because that's what,
I don't have a particular answer to that, but I know if you register your car, get your plate in the spring and you sell it 2 months later, you don't get a refund on that. I mean, so that's one way they work. So I'm not opposed to giving somebody a kind of reimbursement for the fee they paid because it's a little different on an EV.
well, we've also got the whole construct of going through the year. And
Well, yeah.
you picked a monthly or a quarterly charge. And there's a truing up at the end. If you've got a credit, would we just roll that into the next year? Or would we expect there be a truing up?
Again, can the credit apply to your registration?
Mm.
You know, can you go to your Mind
With
EMV
my-
now and just go to whatever?
Yeah, well,
Possibly.
in my income taxes, if I overpay, I can always roll it into my next quarterly payment, or I can get a refund.
Yeah.
So I can do it both ways. But
I would like to understand a little better, but I like the idea that you get a credit. I don't know if we have to do a refund because most people that, I mean, if somebody leaves the state, well, too bad, I guess. But if you're gonna have some kind of vehicle, you're gonna have some kind of bill from DMV that you could get, you could use the credit. And giving somebody a $20 refund. It might be not worth the administrative costs.
I think it would be administratively really tough.
And
So, yeah, the credit would be the way I would go.
it's going to the T fund. So it's helping the roads.
Well, and then we get into the $89 and how.
Well, I'm not, well, I think both, or if you overpay on if you do the quarterly payments, and if you have this, where you pay the 89, and then you have the inspection, that 89, I think, would be part of that credit.
Yeah, I'm for a refund. I mean, I disagree with I guess I'm just like confused about where we are with decision points on this, because I have some like general perspectives, and I feel like there's a lot of my opinions are dependent on the answers to other questions that we have not
We're
resolved.
looking to
So,
get
'cause
a
it's-
draft together that
I'd like
we're
that
gonna
too.
go through.
Yeah, so I guess I'm like, I would love to share my perspective on, I think the two questions you're asking, credit or refund, and then like upfront payment versus end of year payment. That would be dependent to me on the equity and equality of it compared to gas drivers. So you have to not think about this just as EV drivers getting a refund or EV drivers getting a credit. This is supposed to be for all gas drivers eventually.
Mhm.
So we are setting up a concept for all drivers.
Yeah,
So if I
that's
so
exactly
I just
right.
want to be clear that if we're talking about this, these are discussions that won't just affect me as a driver, but will affect anyone who owns a vehicle. So I don't think that the decisions we're making are being made in that frame. And I am generally not comfortable presenting a decision that I personally have on those things until I get more clarity on what we're doing.
The
That
only-
is, you told us the Ways and Means Amendment. No, the House presented it, so there's no indexing of the MMUF, but there's also no long-term all vehicles being a part of it, like who gets, I guess those bigger questions. would
But
be
the
what I-
indexing was the next question
Oh,
that we're
okay.
gonna get to. We're looking to get a draft that is in this, and what I would say about it sounds to me like there was enough people around the table with we would rather do upfront, because upfront we could do a monthly or a quarterly charge. The back end, if we wait till the end of the year, they're gonna owe everything at one lump sum. Does that
No, well, I mean, we'll have
reflect?
to. I mean, it would be good to have scenarios. I think we should keep most of what we're talking about in play. But when I was thinking monthly, I was thinking that it wouldn't be all of it. It wouldn't with the prospective versus like pay as you go. I was thinking it would be pay as you go.
Yeah,
With a deposit at the beginning, just to make sure people don't run into bad situations. But that's a lot of detail at this point. But we can do that with a couple of these scenarios.
Well, there's two. You do the upfront or you pay incrementally.
Right.
Wherever the incremental goes. And then at the end, the question is, do you have a credit or you do have it? And what I would say for the envisionment is that whatever we're doing for electric is going to be plug-in hybrids. This is going to be regular hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and then gas powered vehicles are all gonna live within this
Oh, yeah.
structure that we're setting up for electric cars now. And that's it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna make that flow through all of the attempt to try to bring everybody on board.
Yes, and so I was actually gonna suggest at later point that we not just use BEV as the type of vehicle, that we somewhere say vehicles, subject to this are blank. And then when we start adding other categories, we just need to change that one
Mhm.
sentence in the statute, but that's it.
or we can just lay out that we want to go into effect for everyone
Or like the intent is.
I
that
think
we go to-
they're not even close to being ready for that.
Yeah, then I think that's a problem.
Well, it's not a problem if you're not ready for it. We're still paying we're still paying the road users fee at the pump.
Yeah, but if you're an efficient car, you're the main driver of our revenue going down. So there's this whole area of like Priuses, like if you really want to get into it, that's our biggest drop in revenue. And they're the group that we are not even in discussion of how to
No,
capture the revenue.
we're gonna get there.
So I guess.
The plan is to get there. And
I guess it's just, I'm asking why we can't have that in this language. Like, and I think that perhaps the agency disagrees with it, but it.
So I can't speak for the agency. And I would invite Patrick to do that, but there is every possibility, if you want the language to include a phased in
Yeah.
or other sort of implementation, I can draft that. And it could be, as simple as, adopting a definition of, subject vehicle or covered
Yeah.
vehicle, something like that, that then gets updated over time, so we don't have to rewrite
Yeah.
That's
But
your
we're-
point, that's what I was thinking.
the whole thing.
We're
but
already,
it's-
we're
Yeah.
in,
I love that idea.
we're working on a draft that would
Right,
bring everybody.
yeah.
And I'd love to
the-
include that in that draft.
Well,
So we could have an
It's
intent.
gonna be,
Yeah.
we are only right now talking about electric because that's the first stage in, but this is going to include everyone.
And I guess what I'm saying is I'd like that spelled out in the bill with a timeline about how we get.
We're gonna get there.
Oh,
We're gonna,
okay.
it's gonna be in front of you to talk about an implementation of plug-in hybrids, gas. We're gonna lay this out. I will
Oh.
say to you, what, I've asked them to draft is something that would say over the court, and we can argue over the date, over the next 5 years, we in stages will bring everybody on.
Oh, you were asked to have that drafted?
I've asked to have that drafted.
Yes,
Oh,
but
great.
I can't share that without
Yeah.
sharing it first.
Well, you
so,
don't,
like,
you don't
yeah,
have.
just have to
He
understand.
doesn't have the draft ready.
Yeah.
I've asked for it and we went through it all. So that's coming next.
So that's really helpful. Obviously, I didn't know that information. He's very good at client confidentiality.
Well,
But if you are
I've
doing
tried
it-
to say to the,
Can we
I
see that
have-
though when it's ready?
I've tried to say to the committee, that's been the intention, and I think I've heard from everybody at the table that we're good to go with doing everything and bringing everybody on board in the next few years.
Yes, I think what I'm asking for, and it sounds like it's already in the works, is to have drafted language, to have a stepped implementation plan into that in the new language we see. So I don't need to request Damien
You're
to
gonna,
draft that.
you're gonna have that language hopefully will be totally in front of you with all of this.
Oh.
And backing it by next Wednesday.
Okay, yeah, I had not understood that you had already had a requested draft to Damien on top of what we're seeing now.
Yes.
So that's new information. What are the other pieces that you've asked him so that I don't have to make a separate request?
Well, or just like, maybe let,
Yeah.
tell her if it's already.
Yeah, I don't care what he tells me,
Okay.
anything that we had, you
So
will tell her.
what I've been asked to draft,
Okay,
and so this, I'm sorry for keeping my mouth shut, but this is always a delicate dance where I don't want to inadvertently share something.
And this is
Before one
all
of you
meant
starts
to
discussing
get a
it.
draft in
Yeah.
front that will reflect the direction this committee and all up for change.
beautiful.
So I've been asked to prepare a full draft that more accurately reflects the agency's sort of vision for how they can implement this, correct some of the errors that I had in the initial draft, and does the cleanup that the House did on some of the things that were in the initial draft that were duplicative, where I pointed out, we deleted like 2 pages of language in Ways and Means that was duplicative. It's been asked to include a 5-year step implementation with transition language from that the agency has roughed out and that I'm going to work on that maps out, variety of things for the implementation strategy and ties into their federal grant requirements. And so it includes methods to account for in-state and out-of-state vehicle miles traveled, methods for accounting for in-state vehicle miles traveled by vehicles that are registered in another state, integration and costs for alternative mileage reporting methods, introduction.
And I would say in that integration, I suggested maybe the Virginia model where they have a flat fee, they have a quarterly fee, and then they had at the end, they also have a device in the car choice, because the device is where if you elected into that, you can tell exactly whether they're in-state or out-of-state travel.
Yeah, but it's expensive. Very
Right.
expensive, but that, we'll talk about that.
But we'll talk about
Yeah.
that, and if, but just
Yeah.
to,
It's good
you know,
options.
I would say I erred on the side that what we heard from every state is every state had choices.
Yes,
And I think, you know, if you choose that device and you want to pay for it
yeah,
because you're going to Florida every year,
Yeah.
yeah,
yeah. But it's your
Auto change.
choice.
yeah.
Okay, keep going.
See, we started with this. This is great.
Well, well, we have to get,
Agreed.
we have to get the
Yeah.
draft together for everything. And the decisions about how you pay up front are gonna play into all of that. And
Yeah.
okay,
So there's, yeah, to understand this, there's the initial sort of implementation for EVs. There's a staged implementation over 5 years for light duty vehicles. There's this report back from AOT and DMV in consultation with Agency of Digital Services on the things I just mentioned, plus potentially expanding to medium and heavy duty vehicles. So these are vehicles over 10,000 pounds, and potential rate designs based on vehicle weights, because you start having bigger impacts.
And this was actually the big point that they highlighted in the UVM study. I highlighted it, but we definitely need to go over that. They said their main finding at the end, the biggest thing that was missing was that there was, I'm just gonna read it because I literally just read it. That on average, this occurs because commercial, medium and heavy duty vehicles would on average pay less. So they're basically making the point that the MBUF policies that were created are least equitable. Like their least equitable factor is that heavier vehicles are causing the majority of problems with road weight, but are least impacted by an MBUF. That was like their final. So we need to look into that.
Right, and for the initial period, those vehicles will continue paying gas and diesel tax. This envisions looking at that as a potential option to bring them on board, but not within the 5 year stepped out, because there isn't currently a plan for what those fees would look like. And then addressing issues related to fuel taxes, revenue sustainability, carbon reduction, et cetera. And they would propose filing the transition strategy, the full transition strategy on or before October 15th, 2028, with an interim report for additional recommendations on the transition for plug-in hybrids, hybrid electric, and highly fuel efficient internal combustion light duty vehicles.
and you know, part of the issue there is October of 2020, they have to file the report with the feds.
Right.
And so some suggestion about how they report back to the legislature in the summer before that.
Right, and there is the interim report due next January with additional recommendations. And that's envisioned as an oral report so that they don't have to draft a big paper report. They can just come into the committee. The other pieces that I have noted in here, and so the that summer report was proposed for with either JTOC and Ways and Means and Finance or the Transportation Committees and Ways and Means and Finance, since this is where transportation and tax and fee policy merge. You run into that overlapping jurisdiction issue. And then continuing to how do you integrate this for vehicles that have an internal combustion engine as part of their motive power? How do you integrate this in the interim? Do they pay a mileage-based user fee rate that takes into account the gas tax that they're paying too? So that's one of the things that's looked at in here, because the gas tax will continue to capture out-of-state vehicles too. And
We
so,
don't want to lose that 28%.
right, so that's, and I think one of the other states is doing this with prorated amounts. So if you have,
Virginia does, if you're 25 miles, if your car is rated 25 miles per gallon or less, you don't pay, but it's graduated when you go above that.
right, and so doing something like that for vehicles as they transition into the MBUF. And then we've mentioned choice already. Implementation date is 2031. And
The only thing that, I would say is, I think and Patrick, you can comment on it, we have to say something about outreach.
yes,
And the agency would have a plan, but I think what we heard from every state was outreach is important.
Yes,
And-
early and on.
Are we missing anything, Patrick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as part of our grant work, we have a substantial budget that is targeted exclusively to public outreach and engagement on this. So that would be a normal part of how we roll this out for electric vehicles. So no, I don't think you're.
But I mean, in all of the stuff that just got laid out, is there anything else that we have missed that needs to be in a draft for us to go through as a committee?
No, I mean, so the administration is proposing this as a fee on electric vehicles because that's a finite amount of vehicles where we can make sure that we work to get this right. This would allow, once implemented, for thinking about how other vehicles might be incorporated into the program, but that's not what we're proposing at this time. But when you do think about just bringing it back to the central question here about the language that you are considering, when you do think about how vehicles that are paying any amount of gas tax right now would be incorporated into the future, the Ways and Means language just doesn't work. You would not be able to fit those kinds of vehicles into that framework because you'd have people who are paying gas taxes as they go, and then other vehicles that would just be paying almost a year later than when the miles were incurred. So the more analogous option is to be able to, yes, pay at the end if that's what people choose, but if people decide that they are better off by either paying upfront or paying on a monthly or quarterly basis, to provide that option. so that they're not behind and they don't have a huge payment at the end of the year. That would be the more analogous situation that would allow for the incorporation of more vehicles. And what you've talked about in terms of if the fuel tax were to remain in place, then there's a system that could be devised to apply those fuel taxes as credits, what are estimated against what is owed for a road usage charge. So the language that you have before you around the ways and means, I'm just stressing, would not work in terms of thinking about how to future-proof this for other iterations of a program.
That's a
Does that
does
work for,
I don't understand, you're not talking about all the language, you're talking about some of the language.
he's talking about upfront payments versus back-end payments.
Yeah,
And that I think, whether it's quarterly or, can I ask this, Patrick, if, we go with a monthly charge? I've got some people that are older that don't like stuff coming out of their, bank account. And they want to pay in a check. Would we really want people doing $15 a month or less in checks coming into DMV?
I mean, I think that's something that we have to think about in the language that we've provided. That sort of thing would be allowed. I think we also have to consider how many people actually would take advantage of that, and whether just providing the option at least helps for those few people that do, and doesn't necessarily overburden the administration of the program. So I think that kind of thing will come up during the development process, and then what we learn through these first few years of implementing the program for electric vehicles. That is in part one of the reasons why you would focus just on one group of vehicles, not only because they haven't been paying their full share into the transportation fund, but because you don't want to just roll this out to all vehicles without fully understanding all the different edge cases that are bound to come up through the implementation of the program.
Okay, go ahead.
so just another parameter that we haven't talked about is privacy. I mean, we would talk about it when we have the little monitors that tell you where you went. But some people want to have want to be able to use cash. So it just and you can do that when you buy gas. So maybe we can't take cash, but I think we should be ready to answer why we can't and have high level of privacy in this system. We just need to have as high a level of privacy as possible.
So everyone will be allowed to pay in the same way they pay now for all their other fees at DMV, because the final reconciliation will take place at the point of registration.
Okay, so they could
So-
pay.
So somebody could absolutely pay in cash or by check or by credit card, any number of ways. Those
Right.
options are preserved. The
Right.
question, I think, to the chair's question is more about if somebody chooses a payment plan option where they've spaced their payments out over a monthly or quarterly basis, is it worth allowing for all of those other payment methods at that same time? And I think that's what we'll learn through the implementation of it.
I like the idea of everybody getting to a system where you can make payments and do that. Administratively, if I've got someone older, and I've got a bunch of people that I deal with all the time, in my other life, in a couple like the college savings plan, I've got people that they may regular contributions to their college savings plan. And I've got people that do not want to electronically hook up their bank account to any system because they're afraid of scammers out there. And they like where they put a check in the mail and do that. And of course, the management company is always saying, we want everything electronic because it costs us less money. But so there is a pushback.
Right. Well, it's good that we're talking about it at this phase.
Right, well,
Yeah, and we need to.
is there anything that we've missed in this is an initial draft that we're trying to get in front of everybody out there so we can have the conversation. Is there any areas we've missed that we should have in that initial draft for discussion? Go.
I know that there isn't like a findings and intent section that might clearly fit in with this language, but I really do think we should spell out that we don't want an MBUF to be created. If we're gonna just have it be EVs for some unknown period of time, because they're not paying their fair share, I think we should also have findings that talk about how we don't want this to inadvertently reduce us meeting our climate action plan goals. Like I feel like we should spell that out, because if we're going to be adding an additional cost to a specific vehicle type, that at the same time we are actively trying to encourage the purchase of, I think we should at least call out that tension in some way.
I haven't got any problem with mentioning that. You should put that down there. I should also think that what we might want to say, and it's been around this table in the statement of purpose, is the system right now is not fair to everybody. The system, because of the change in road usage and the change in vehicles, which has happened to us, not us doing anything, that the system now is unfair. And what we're trying to get to is a system where, as close as we can, that people are paying equally.
Yeah, you know, whatever we draft and when we come up with a bill, it should be clear that, you know, we're not out to punish anybody.
No.
We're just trying to maintain the roads we have and get people to pay equitably.
Well, what we're trying to do is maintain revenues, not it, you know, at this point, we aren't trying to raise more money.
Yes,
Right.
revenue
We're
Yeah.
trying to make this revenue neutral.
that lowers my blood pressure on this whole topic.
Nice. I think better already.
The morning has been worth it.
Well, you should have given me sugar first thing. You got the tea cake, you know.
And
This is just the end of
I don't want to put pressure on you, but you and Patrick need to bust a little something on this,
elbow grease.
because I will remind you, by the time we get to here next week, we've got 10 days, 10 half days.
Understood.
We have 5 days.
So my plan is to have a draft of the basic right now MBUF to Patrick this afternoon.
Yep.
So that he can begin reviewing that. And then on Monday or over the weekend, really, my plan is to get this integration by 2031 at the intent statement and some of these this other reporting language put together, so that I can then trade with Patrick on Monday, make changes based on the agency's feedback to the now language, get Patrick the other language to review, and then I haven't checked with Patrick if this works with his schedule, but then with the goal of having a full package for you by I think you said next Wednesday.
Yep.
Earlier. And that way Patrick can get me feedback by Tuesday on the other language. But you'll have this sort of now language for how are we rolling out MBUF for EVs on January 1 to consider next Tuesday. when you're back here, and then on Wednesday, you'll have the rest of the language package to review.
And I would say to the committee, what that brings up is that, and I will tell you the 5-year date that I came from. We had Logan in here talking about if we got the purchase and use tax back, that we had 6 years. Well, when I hear 6 years, what my view is around that, to run through that is steady state with no recession, no problems or anything. My hope would be that 5 years from today, we have implementation. This is not going to happen by itself without us pushing it along. What that brings up for a question that this committee is going to have to struggle with is, what do we do in this 5-year period? And that is going to bring, the only thing that carries out 5 years is the purchase and use tax that the administration has put forward. And so we're going to have that whole discussion about the 5-year period and what we would do. So we're going to have to, and I don't expect that to be an easy conversation for us all to come to a place.
Thank you. Can I just make one comment on that? Is that the 5-year plan or 5 years that we have, it's actually worse than that, in my opinion, because of all of the projects that are either being canceled or much reduced. So, so we're hurting ourselves within that 5-year.
Well, in that 5-year period, without that, we looked at the paving. You can't have 55 miles with 2,700 miles of state highway, and we're doing 1%. I mean, that's
it's worse even than we think.
But we have to have the discussion about how do we get from here to the long term. That the vehicle miles traveled is the long term to get to a stable place. But we have a 5-year problem that is, so we're going to have to struggle with that.
I appreciate what you want to do.
Well,
I also
this is
I also just want to say, I don't think nationally we've seen proof of concept that NBUF can fix your revenue shortfall. We have not seen that. Like, there's no state that has, I think we saw one state that's kind of gone past the breaking even point of it administratively for themselves recently. So I do think if we're going to have these conversations, we need to talk about indexing the gas tax. Like that.
Actually, that's not, to back up, we didn't cover whether or not we wanted to include indexing in vehicle miles traveled. And that's an issue that we're going to have to discuss in here.
Yes, and it sounds like the House did not index it because there was no indexing of the gas tax.
Well,
so they intentionally didn't.
Exactly, is my understanding.
But the idea, but the discussion is if we envision this moving to a long term for everyone, do we think indexing is important?
Not if we're not indexing the gas tax.
Only if we want to keep our revenues.
I'm but the ultimate piece would, we would get this for everybody. So do we, and it's perfectly legitimate to say not now and maybe sometime in the future, we would consider indexing when this all went to place. But I will warn you that if you don't do it here, it becomes harder down the road. So that's just.
And I think fairness would not be having one fuel type be having an escalating cost while another fuel type does not. So that feels like not fair to me.
I think we're at the point.
Oh, you're hurting.
Great.
But there, so we'll have a draft on Wednesday.
Yeah, and there will be some language that could be reviewed on Tuesday if you want to fit that in. Otherwise, we can do all of it on Wednesday.
And I've made some individual requests of Damian for T-bill stuff.
I have individual requests from you and Senator Harrison.
So mine is.
Andy has one.
And also Senator Perchlik. So
When should we be expecting that we'll be reviewing those pieces?
If we can get through the purchase and use tax, we can, and the short term, and we can get through the NBUF stuff next week. At the end of the week, we'll make a decision about timetable for the rest of us.
Okay, I guess I just get a little worried that those pieces will not happen if we kind of push them to the end. So I'm wondering kind of, if you think about the next 10 days, what would you like to do if someone has language that they want?
For
Like, how do you
me,
get witnesses?
for me, the big picture comes first. And then as soon as we start to get that nailed down, we'll trying not to forget anything and
I know, so
but
I think in
I'm
my,
just trying to, I got one step at a time.
yes, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I think what I'm trying to get at is I'd like clarity because I will have witnesses associated with some sections of my recommendations. And if there is a timeline of when I should be requesting them to come in, that would be really helpful information. So it sounds like your answer was not next week, but
Not
the
next
week
week.
after.
Yeah.
So if I was to be inviting witnesses, what would you recommend?
Let me talk with,
Yeah,
Yes.
so I can talk to Megan.
yeah, put the stuff out for Megan and we'll struggle with schedule.
can I generally ask the committee, some of you have overlapping requests.
Mm,
Can I coordinate between those of you who do?
I'm good.
Because
Yes.
what I,
Do you
Like-
mind if he shares the request with me?
I'd love if he shared.
Please.
okay, great. What I want to avoid is drafting two versions of the same thing.
Yeah,
Especially if two or three of you can get together in advance and iron out the differences. And that'll allow me some freedom to talk to you all when we're all in the room too.
Okay.
So, great, thank you.